I'm Old Sneelock. Welcome to another episode of Old Sneelock's Workshop. Well, after I got the glass out, I went down to the local hardware store and picked up another pane of glass. Actually two. I've already replaced the bottom one, but with all the background noise and the kids screaming in the playground, I decided I just didn't want to show that part. I like using DAP 33. I've had this can for a long time. Actually, this can is just around because I like the can. It has a lot of good information on it. Ingredients: calcium carbonate, petroleum oil, hydrous magnesium silicate, and vegetable oils. Now this new can doesn't have the same information on it. I mean, it has most of the same information. Whole lot of legal language on there in two different languages. And it says contains calcium carbonate, talc, and crystalline silica. Now those things are considered carcinogens. But crystalline silica is that you breathe it in. So if you're going to work with the dry stuff, try not to breathe the crap in. It's not good for your lungs. One of the first things I always need to do is I need to work the putty to get the oils moved around in it. And that's kind of like doing modeling clay. You just work it around a bit. And that's just get the oils mixed all the way through it so that it flows easily. I'm kind of out of practice doing windows. Putting in the putty is kind of a muscle memory thing. You have to get your hand back in again. So I'm having to go over things a couple times, whereas I used to just do this one pass. But that's okay. The old house, I put in a lot of windows. I built storm windows for the house. And I went through and rebuilt all the windows in the house. And I put in barn windows and built windows and set barn windows in the workshop. And just in general, over the 20 years, I spent a lot of time playing with glass. But it's been about 7 years since I had to put a window in. You buy a better house. Had a lot of practice at the old house. But that house was built in 1891, this one was built in 1962. Or 61, one or the other. So this one didn't need as much work on it. First thing I need to do, put some putty into the frame to make a base for the glass to sit on. If you just set the glass in there, you're really not sealing it off. You'll have a exterior seal, but you won't really bed the glass into the putty. So I was taught to do it this way. Is this the right way? I don't know. It's the way I do it. I just take off a dab and push it in there so I get a good grip into the wood. Hi, Zadie. You being a good dog? Are ya? Sadie's in the house watching me. She's also thinking she'd rather be out here with me. I like to roll it out into a string. It's easier when the window's laying out flat. I don't have to spend so much time trying to force it in there to stick because it doesn't have any pull on it. But when it's vertical, it wants to try and fall out of the joint. David Chadwick mentioned putting some boiled linseed oil on the inside of the window frame, and I think that's probably a good idea. It would have made the caulk a little stickier, and I wouldn't have had to fight it quite so much. Now, I might have been able to just add some linseed oil to the caulk. Now, I suppose if this was newer putty, I'd have better luck getting it to stay in there. But I'm not going to go buy new putty just because I'm putting in one window. This is the stuff left over from the jobs over in Union City, and it still works. I just have to work with it a little bit more. It's not quite as sticky. If you're starting out, get yourself a new can. You don't want to have to fiddle with it like I'm doing here. But you know, we always say waste not, want not here at Old Sneelock's Workshop. Just because it's a little old and takes a little bit more work to make it work, doesn't stop me from using it. Now the lower window has a groove on top and the bottom. It's just a straight rabbet. The upper window has got a groove that it has to go into and slide up into it. So I have to put a little putty in the bottom of that groove too. But that was a little bit harder to do. It's a very small little groove. That means I need to roll out a very small little string, and it doesn't want to stay together when you get it that small. And if you don't tuck it in, the window won't seal. Having air leaks on a window is always bad. Having water leaks is worse. It's not likely to leak water up in that little groove up there, but you don't want to have air leaks. A lot easier for me when I get out here where I can use my right hand. Doing it left-handed I can do it, but I have a lot more control right-handed. I think it's more a case of practice. I do a lot more stuff with my right hand than I do with my left, and my fine motor skills are a little bit better because of practice. Glad I don't have 100 of these windows to do. But when you're out of practice at something, it's good to give yourself a little time to get used to it. Like any job, you get better with experience. And even a guy who's an old hand at it has to go back and practice some. Okay, I got the base layer of putty in. Took a little bit longer than what I wanted it to, but like I said, it takes time. You got to practice. Now I'm going to put my gloves back on and put that piece of glass in there. Get my glazier's points around and ready to go in. Now because this has to go into that upper groove, I have to kind of tuck it in there. And I want to just push it in nice and easy. Let it work its way back in. And that pushes the glazing putty up into the joint and fills in around the glass and beds it in so that it's nice and solid. I'm just pushing gently. I have to let that putty, and this putty's a little stiffer than the new stuff, remember. I have to let the putty kind of flow around the glass. If I just shoved on it, I could easily crack the glass. Now that I'm done handling the glass, and it's locked up into that groove up in the top, it can't come out. I can take my gloves off. And I take a glazier's point. I like these because they have a little ledge on there for the putty knife to push against. So I can just set it in place. I like to have the first one in the middle where it's nice and easy to get to. How many do you need to put in there? Well, depends on the size of the window. The older windows with multiple panes, and some new ones have it too, you can get by with just 4. They're only there just to hold the glass in place while you put the putty in. The putty does most of the holding. It doesn't hurt to have more than 4. I put one in the middle, usually on the bottom first because it's easy to get to. Then that little shoulder lets me just shove this up in there. With that groove in there, you might not need to have the glazier point on the top. But I'm a belt and suspenders kind of guy. This is a window that moves around, and I like to make sure that it's going to stay where I put it. Sliding it up and down and slamming the window, you're not supposed to, but it does happen. Slips out of your fingers. You don't want to have that glass come out. 2 reasons. 1, it's a heck of a mess, and you have to put it back in again. The other reason is having a piece of glass slide out and land on your foot is never a good thing. I'm only going to put 1 up in the top. I got 3 on the bottom, and I'm going to put 1 on each side. You want to be careful. You want to shove into the wood. You don't want to push it against the glass. Remember, we don't want to do point loading. Okay, glazier points are all done. I have the glass in the window. All I have to do is put the outer seal on it. Now, is this the perfect way to put a window in? Some people will tell you their way is absolutely the best. Well, I'm not you, you're not me. This is the way I do it. Is it the best way? It is for me, until I find a better one. I'm always open to suggestions. Learn lots of new things just by being willing to say what I do isn't perfect, and learn from the experience of others. But if you follow this method, it's going to end up with a piece of glass in the window frame. And that is the goal of the whole thing, right? Corners are always the hardest for me, especially when I have something like this window in the way. One last little bit to do. I don't have to put putty up along the top because it's got that groove that the glass slides into, and that wraps the putty around the glass and fills it in. Okay, that's the last of the putty that I gotta get out of the tub. Okay, I'd say we're done. Is it perfect? Nope. It's going to seal off the window though. No bugs or wind or cold to get in. So I'm happy. I just have to let everything set, and I'll come back and clean up the window. Then I got to paint, because if you don't paint the putty, it will deteriorate. This is part 2 of replacing the glass in a window. It's been a long project, kind of out of practice, but job's done and I'm happy. Got to come back, clean up the window after the putty dries a little bit, and then put some paint on the window. Always want to seal up the putty, otherwise it's going to start cracking on you. You got to cover it with paint. You got to give it a day or two to dry though before you do that. If you have any suggestions for a new video, questions about today's video, or any of the other videos on the channel, just drop a note in the comments. You know I read them all. Thanks for watching.